Hey, everybody. Welcome back to this episode of Think Business Live. Looking forward to talking to Punit Dhillon, CEO of Skye Bioscience, a public pharmaceutical company. I've been really looking forward to this talk, and because I just think the pharmaceutical companies have so much to say right now, right? There's so many things, and whether it's the pharmaceutical companies that we hear about every day, or the pharmaceutical companies like yours that we hear about, but maybe not hear about every day, like the ones, the Pfizer's, et cetera, et cetera.
Mhm.
And so tell everybody, let's kind of start off and talk about, what is Skye Bioscience and what do you guys do?
Great. Thanks, Phil. Thanks for having me on your show,
Yeah.
John. I couldn't agree with you more. The whole pharmaceutical space is kind of underserved. There's been obviously a lot of discussion that's been going on in the COVID space, and that was important, kind of world-changing disease. We're working on a novel class of molecules for ophthalmology disorders. So we're quite excited about pushing that forward. I've been in the space for 15 to 20 years now. I've worked in the DNA vaccine area, then got into cancer immunotherapy. That's where I spent the last 9 years. And then in the last 15 months, I've been running this company called Skye Bioscience, which I'm quite excited about. We're moving our lead molecule into development for glaucoma. So we're about to start a clinical trial. And it's supposed, it's very intriguing data that we've seen so far in the non-human studies. And we hope that it's going to be differentiated in terms of the landscape, offering these patients something radically new, but also has a significant change for their glaucoma.
Yeah. Can we talk about data for a minute? I think we've all heard data shows more in the last couple of years as we've all been living through COVID. But what type of data do you look for, right? And what type of data do you not only look for but sense for? I guess is my question, right? Because I think it always intrigues me. You have this new product. You're testing it on non-humans, and so what are you looking for as you begin to test it on humans?
Yeah, so when you're pushing forward like a new novel class of molecule, like what we're doing, we're really looking for making sure that those preclinical studies are designed in a way that they're in the models that can be the best analog for what you're going to see in human studies. So in our case, rabbits, specific species of rabbits are the model for ocular disorders. We've done those testing. Now we're moving it on into additional animal models, and then moving it so we can replicate and recapitulate that data in humans. But yeah, that's a key thing. Like every step of the way, we have these important stage gates where we're looking at a whole range of different parameters. In this case, we're trying to measure for lowering of intraocular pressure. In other diseases or other types of drugs that are in development, they're looking for other efficacy types of endpoints. But it's important on both sides, safety and the efficacy side. Safety is measured, in terms of measuring for specific outputs. Like you may want to look at toxicity or pharmacology in the blood of a drug. It's a little bit difficult to talk to an animal about.
That's what I said. Right. That's what I said. Like, what do you sense for? Because data will show data, but that's that. I'm just curious on that. Okay, so so let's talk about you. So we talked a little bit about you and the company, but let's talk about you are you were a recipient for the Most Admired CEO Award by the San Diego Business Journal in 2017. The Biocom Catalyst Award in 2018. So what were what are they admiring about you, and what do you admire about yourself? And I don't mean that in an egotistical way, but like, I think sometimes sometimes it's hard when you're successful to step back and say, you know what, I'm actually proud of myself for that.
Yeah. Well, awards aside, I have to give credit to some amazing teams that I've been a part of that have been working on life-changing drugs that have made a difference for patients. Whether they're still in the drugs that I've been involved with are still in development, but they have had a huge impact in terms of their significance. And those teams that were involved in pushing that forward, it's a group effort. So of course, as a CEO, often get the credit for those kind of things. It's recognized in these different types of awards. But more importantly, I've been really pleased about having the opportunity to work with people for the last 15 or 20 years. So even in the current company, some of my management goes back a few companies, and we've been working together on different projects. We continue to, be thinking big in terms of where we can make the impact. The discipline, what I'm most proud of is that I remain a very motivated and disciplined individual as an executive, both professionally and personally. So I think that's what kind of sets me apart in terms of I have a very high threshold in terms of self motivation.
Yeah.
And yeah, the athletic side has definitely played a big part of that. So that there's people that work with me know that I am definitely one of those people that work hard and play hard, and we do it together as a team.
Yeah, let's talk about that. You're the author of a new book, Catapult: How to Live a Corporate, how to think like a corporate athlete and strengthen your resilience. Right. I love the title. I love the word catapult. I love, how to think, obviously for obvious reasons, how to think like a corporate athlete, which is how to take what's on the field into the boardroom, and then grow your resilience, strengthen your resilience. Because I think everybody's trying to figure out how to be more resilient, especially today, coming out of, I'm going to say coming out of COVID, the world. And so talk about the book and talk about, how do you become an athlete in the boardroom, in the corporate world, but making sure you're not too aggressive, right? It's not, so where's that balance? How do you do it? And tell us about your book.
Yeah. So there's definitely a very important kind of balance, a big component of the EQ side of the equation these days. But for me, the discipline of growing up as an athlete has really stuck with me. It carried through into my professional career. So I was a competitive swimmer, then competitive rower, and then I moved to the US and worked for a biotech company. And I wasn't really athletic for a few years, just focusing on my career, and then started picking up running. And then that translated into triathlon and competing in Ironman. And I still to compete to this day. But these days, like, I also enjoy just the social aspect of cycling and the social aspect of running or playing with my kids. So endurance training, kind of that mental aptitude that comes along with athletic training, that drive of competing, has really shaped my approach to life, and in the broader sense. And the book was about pulling together those guiding principles that have worked well for me in athletics and translated into the corporate world. So Catapult was really an opportunity to set my own set of principles and framework as a philosophy that is between these two worlds of calling it this corporate athlete. But at the same note, it's what I believe is those principles that worked well for me, and it's offering everyone or the reader a framework to define that for themselves. The key part of the thesis in the book is this whole aspect of everyone's thriving for, most entrepreneurs are thriving for a high-performing lifestyle and being a high-performing individual.
Yeah.
It's mostly a requirement of not only yourself, but also your stakeholders. There's just all these expectations that are thrown at you. So there's a framework in the book called the Catapult Corporate Athlete High Performance Trapezium, which is basically the bedrock of everything that we're doing. So it's built on this aspect of accountability to yourself, physical capacity, emotional intelligence, and then moving towards how you're reaching towards your purpose. And I believe that that's the core of success for anyone, whether you're in entrepreneurship, whether you're a student, whether you're a father. I think that's a lot of it extends beyond just this aspect of a corporate athlete. I think it just is a good philosophy to have for people to be in line with their purpose.
Yeah, I love it. Let's talk about being in line with your purpose and maybe a couple more of the guiding principles, because, the guiding principles, how you lay them out, may have a different order for everybody who reads the book, right? Or have different weight at different times in their lives or at different age brackets of their life. And so can you talk a little bit kind of on that?
Yeah. So for me, the basic premise was that there's in the first chapter, first principle is about true accountability. So that's the first layer in this trapezium. That's not actually a pyramid. It's purposely left open. But the idea is that you have the ability to trust yourself and commit to your values. That's the bedrock of anything you start on.
I love that. I just want to kind of dive into that, because I think during COVID, people have figured out that they need to dive into their own values more so than I think in a long time. So I didn't mean to interrupt you, but can you talk on that a little bit more?
Yeah. So before you're accountable to anyone else, like most of the time CEOs, they're accountable to their board of directors, they're accountable to their stakeholders. And these are pressures that we put on ourselves, but at the same time, it also starts and ends with us as an individual. So before we form our communities, before we look to others, we only have ourselves to answer to. And there's a lot there to unpack when I make that kind of statement, because there's a lot of expectations and defining that accountability to oneself to get there. So it's really that space of solitude where you're making a vow of responsibility or self-responsibility to yourself, and you're confident enough and brave enough and you have the courage enough to be great and make your mark on it with that discipline. And the structure, the thesis in the book kind of then builds on top of that. The next layer is this aspect of a physical capacity. So if you have accountability down to yourself, then build the endurance and the stamina to promote all those other aspects of yourself. And then spend time on emotional intelligence. That's the third layer. So it's referring to that mindset of that positive mindset that's important for us to keep moving forward. People, often ask me, what's my job as a CEO? I break it down to three basic things. My job is to help my team remove obstacles. My job is to keep this team moving forward and the company moving forward. And third, as a biotech company, we don't have revenue, so my job is to make sure that we remain capitalized and funded. So there's a lot there in terms of those things that includes that positive mindset to keep moving that forward. Then we go into mental capacity, the importance of mental stamina and the ability to focus, because you're dealing with complex problems. You have a book called Think Big. You talk about this aspect of you're not going to be able to solve those challenges without the discipline and focus of doing it. You think about people like the Navy SEALs. They are parachuted into a situation. They have like 30 minutes to identify and work out all the calculations for themselves before they go and execute their mission. So I think that kind of aptitude takes a certain amount of mental capacity and practice to do that.
I define thinking big as the small things you need to do every day to get to your big, to get to your purpose. And that, like you're talking about, the discipline, the resilience, the commitment to yourself. I do want to dive into a little bit more on that same topic. Your principle number one, true accountability, right? I love how you put the word true in front of it, because I think most people say they want to be held accountable, but they really don't. And so, talk to me about, and talk to the Think community a little bit more about, the book is great. You have these principles, you have this, this mindset, this athletic and corporate, tips, but then you actually have to execute and do something with it. And that takes a lot of accountability. So can you just kind of talk about what that needs to look like?
Yeah, so I built out this kind of, in this process of trying to dissect what that meant for me. I did create like this formula. I tried to be pragmatic as I can, or kind of apply common sense as much as possible, so it's relatable. Again, like, this is how my brain was working when I was writing this down, but
Yeah.
it might not compute exactly to the same as anybody else. But essentially for me, there's an equation associated with accountability. It's built on this aspect of, you have values, you have trust, you establish structure, you establish these components of motivation. All of those things are the key, micro pillars associated with accountability. So values, trust, structure, motivation, and then you keep doing it over and over again, and that's positive habits.
Yeah.
So those positive habits, keep reinforcing that. And then, there's an undercurrent underneath that's intuition, right? You're not going to do things that aren't serving you well. That's the multiple associated with accountability, and it's breaking it down into those kind of subcomponents. I have my routine. I travel. I'm a Canadian, so I travel to Canada quite often, Vancouver. I grew up in this neighborhood where we still have the same house. I mean, we were born and raised or not born there, but I lived in the house since 1985. We still have the same house. When I go back to Vancouver, I always run this 5-mile loop. It goes from starting at my house, past my elementary school,
Nice.
past Queen Elizabeth Park, past my middle school, up the street that's now been gentrified, and then back to my house. But it's a reminder for me that no matter where I travel around the world, like, a couple of years ago I was at Davos. I live in basically a bubble in San Diego where they pave the roads every year. And for me, doing that 5-mile loop is a reminder of where I'm from.
Mm-hmm.
So those are those kind of things that I think everyone has to find for themselves in terms of how they keep grounded, and that centers around values.
Yeah, I love that. My last question before we do a quick speed round on the book is, your principle number 9 is joy, and one of the things I am seeing right now is a lot of people having a hard time finding joy. Right.
Mm-hmm.
I think COVID has kind of just affected people in ways where they're just trying to find joy. The Atlantic just had an article. What if you're waiting for what if what you're waiting for never comes? I can't remember the exact name of it, but it's referencing how people are feeling during COVID, and referencing a play, Waiting for Godot or Godot. I never remember how it's pronounced. Yeah. And so talk a little bit about joy and how people can really kind of find some joy today.
Yeah, so this is inspired by Marie Kondo. So,
is it?
I mean, she's not the only one that talked about joy, but it was a constant reminder, because when you watch the Netflix thing like that aired a few years ago, it was like, okay, well, wow, this is like a just simple concept. So joy is a great motivator for anything that you touch on a daily basis. It's the one quality where it'll force you to pull out, what these things mean to you, and the why associated for it. So I believe it's important for setting anyone back on a course. It provides that inspiration. It's what keeps you going. It's almost like the harbinger for all success. So when you find it, you kind of harness it and you use it as a vehicle to achieve your goals. Yeah. And I mean, I think we're both like glass half empty type of people, right? So there's joy for me is a good way to use as a barometer to putting purpose into work, and that involves a certain amount of play, and like, I have these. I don't do business coaching, but I mean, I work with my executive team on a daily basis, and there's a component of this rat race that you end up getting consumed in. But if you take a step back and you look at all the activities that we do, it's almost like a constant game of chess.
Yeah, totally.
And that sparks a lot in terms of the simplicity of what we're doing. There's obviously complexity when you're developing a drug or a novel molecule, but if you take a step back, you're like, okay, well, this is just a big game that we have to win, and it sparks where it can take you.
Yeah, yeah, and I would agree. Stepping back, becoming an observer of the game, and and realize you're playing chess, so you have to kind of see 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 steps ahead of you. Is really what makes the game more strategic, more fun. I love it. I love it. I love it. Congratulations on your book, on building your business. Quick speed round for you. You ready?
Yeah, sure. Go for it.
All right. Favorite book and why?
Favorite book has to be what's it called? Probably Born to Run by Christopher McDougall. Yeah, he's a journalist and runner. So he did a good job writing that book.
Best piece of wisdom you've ever received, Punit?
Always ask yourself why. Why you're doing something constantly. It's the most important question that comes to mind every day.
Good. Finish this sentence. Last question. One thing everybody needs to do to tap into their resilience is
have a sense of joy and stay self-motivated.
All right. I love it. I love it. Tell everybody how they can connect with you, where they can buy your book, where they can learn more about your company, etc.
Perfect. Yeah, you can connect with me at my website, punitdhillon.com. There's a tab, multiple ways to getting a hold of me, including scheduling a coffee. There's also a tab to buy the book. It'll take you straight to the Amazon link. So punitdhillon.com is your one source place to get everything you need.
I love it. Well, I appreciate you taking time. Thanks for talking about discipline, resilience, values, joy, self-motivating ourselves, all of those great things. I appreciate it. All the best to you and the growth of your company. And we'll have you on again soon to talk more about kind of, being an Ironman and what it takes to kind of, be a triathlete. Think community, if Punit can help you, reach out to him. His book, which you can buy, Catapult, check it out on Amazon or at the information he gave you. It'll all be in the show notes as well. Thanks, man. Appreciate your time.
Thanks so much, John.
Thanks.